Welcome into a special web edition of Cuse Countdown. I'm Tyler Rocky alongside Chris Venzon and Jonathon Hoppe. And guys, Syracuse coming off of a big 50-7 win against Central Connecticut State. However, there wasn't all sunshine and rainbows for the Orange. They do lose Antwan Cordy in the first quarter of this one. Huge blow to the secondary as he goes down now in 2 consecutive years early on in the season. No timetable yet on the safety's return, but this time around, Dino Babers not as worried because of who he's got behind him.
We don't know what's wrong. We don't have a final say on Antwan yet. We're going to have to wait and see with the doctors. Obviously, we expect him back. We're trying to hope for the best, so I don't want to even talk about the other part of it. But I do think that's one of the groups where we're extremely deep, and we got a lot of help there in the offseason, and hopefully that depth will be able to carry us through.
So you guys hear Dino Babers right there, next man up mentality. Jonathon, I'll start with you. Who's your next man up?
Yeah, it's Jordan Martin, the grad transfer from Toledo. It seems simple, but he's the guy that's going to come in and replace Cordy if he doesn't play this weekend. Now, why I think that's important, last year when Cordy went down, no one really stepped up, and because of that, there was just kind of a lingering cause of effect there that Cordy wasn't in the lineup. So if Jordan Martin can come in and play well, it kind of tells the defense, you know what, this guy can play too. So Tyler, you said it best. It's that next man up mentality. And if Jordan Martin has that, this defense could really improve down the end of the year.
Well, Hoppe, I don't really know how you can expect an already subpar secondary to improve once they replace one of their best safeties with a transfer who really hasn't had much time in this system. That's why I think the pressure is on the defensive line this week. Only 1 sack against Central Connecticut State. That is absolutely unacceptable if you're SU against an FCS team. I think that they really need to show out, have a very solid game if Syracuse expects to be successful on Saturday.
Now let's shift gears to this week's opponent. That's Middle Tennessee State, and a familiar face on the other side. Scott Shafer, the former SU head coach, he's in now as the defensive coordinator for the Raiders. And guys, I'll start with you, Venzon. What's the danger right there? Because Scott Shafer's a guy who recruited a bunch of these guys to come play for the Orange.
Well, anybody who's ever had a crazy ex-girlfriend really knows how dangerous they can be, and that's exactly the case with Scott Shafer. They kind of know everything about you. You secretly really don't want them to excel when they're away from you, and honestly, that's the biggest issue for Syracuse coming into this game. He has the personnel. He's recruited a lot of the players that are already on this roster, but Syracuse fans might get exactly what they want. Scott Shafer is not excelling at Middle Tennessee State. In his first game against Vanderbilt, Middle Tennessee State gave up 300 yards through the air and had no turnovers. Tell me if that doesn't sound familiar if you're an SU fan. I really don't think that it's going to be threat level midnight. It's not a huge deal, especially with Eric Dungy slinging the ball around, but if SU comes out and gets stuffed on their first 2 possessions, it could be a bit of a concern early on.
Now, Jonathon, you're the self-proclaimed crazy ex-girlfriend resident here. What's scaring you about Scott Shafer?
Well, I don't know about that, Tyler. And Chris, cute analogy, but it's all about X's and O's. And that's why I think Scott Shafer returning to the Carrier Dome isn't that big of a deal. Because when you think about it, he knows the players. He recruited a lot of them. But the offense they're running, it's just a lot different. Dino Babers runs a very unique offense, so Shafer's going to have to spend most of his time prepping for that offense rather than letting everyone know, what Dungy does, what Ishmael does, what Phillips does. But, I'm not too concerned about it, but I am concerned about a defense shutting down Syracuse offense because we all know about the Syracuse defense, and that could be a problem if Syracuse doesn't put up a lot of points.
All right, now let's gear towards the game itself here. Chris, I'll start with you. What does Syracuse need to do to pull out a W?
They need to win the turnover battle. It's plain and simple. Syracuse and Middle Tennessee State both are geared to score a lot of points, and both defenses are struggling so far this season. I would really like them to go out, be aggressive, go and try to get in interceptions, try to strip the ball, because that one stop, that one turnover could be the possession that swings the game. I think it's going to be tight, but those turnovers are especially important if they're going to try to go out there and win on Saturday.
Well, for me, the key, Chris, is getting to the quarterback. When you look at it, Middle Tennessee State, they gave up 5 sacks last week. In the 10 games Stockstill played last year for Middle Tennessee State, he was only sacked 8 times. It's incredible. The reason for that, they've just got 2 returning starters on that offensive line. And for me, that's going to be a key. Get the pass rush. Put the pressure on the quarterback. What that does, alleviates some of the pressure on the secondary. And we all know how that is. So for me, it's getting to the quarterback.
I completely agree.
And Jonathan, your turn to start first here. Does Syracuse get to the quarterback and win this game?
I think they do get it done, Tyler. It's going to be pretty high scoring. Syracuse wins 42-30. Maybe not as high scoring as some are predicting. I actually think the defense is going to fare a little bit better in this game for Syracuse. I like what I saw last week in some areas of the linebackers and defensive line. So if the secondary can perform for SU, should be a big win.
I'm with you on that one. All indications really expect this game to be a blowout. I'm going 45-38. However, I don't think that Syracuse is going to have as much success stopping Richie James, one of the best wide receivers in the nation for Middle Tennessee State. I expect a lot of points to be scored on both sides of the ball. It could be that one turnover. The only thing, though, that could prevent any of that is, just like you said, the defensive line play to disrupt one of those offenses.
All right, so you heard it right there. Our analysts both think a couple shootouts this weekend in the Dumps should be a lot of fun. For Chris Venzon and Jonathon Hoppe, I'm Tyler Rocky. Thank you for watching this web edition of Cuse Countdown, and enjoy the game.